Hi everyone, welcome back to Forsaken Joe. Let me take you straight into the moment that cracked my life open like a rotten egg. It wasn't during a fight or some dramatic screaming match like in the movies. Number. It was just one sentence, spoken in a tone so casual it was almost cruel. You're not a man. She didn't even look at me when she said it. She was scrolling on her phone, sitting on the couch like she was ordering takeout instead of shattering me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt like it was sewn shut. I stood there holding a glass of water, hands shaking, thinking, what does that even mean? After all I've done? But I said nothing. And maybe that silence proved her point. For days, I let her words rot in my chest. I replayed every argument, every stupid moment where I'd tried too hard to please her, every time I'd said sorry, just to keep the peace. Maybe I wasn't the man she wanted. Maybe I never was. Then came the dinner at our mutual friend's place. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to see anyone, but Marcus said it would do me good. I walked in, feeling like a ghost, only to see her sitting there, dressed to kill, laughing, her hand brushing against the arm of a man I'd never met before. She didn't look guilty. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. That's when I knew something dark was hiding beneath the surface, something I wasn't supposed to see. I sat down at that dinner table like I'd just walked into a minefield. Marcus had set the table with his usual over-the-top flair, candles, fancy plates, the kind of setup that makes you feel guilty for eating, but all I could focus on was her, Julia, my wife, well, ex-wife now, I guess, sitting there like nothing had ever happened. She was wearing that navy dress, the one that clung to her in all the ways I remember. Except this time, she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at him. The guy next to her, some tall, sharp-jawed stranger named Ethan, laughed at something she said. His hand brushed against hers on the table, and she didn't move it away. My heart stopped for a second, but I tried to play it cool. I sipped my wine too fast, nearly choking on it while Marcus went on about some trip he was planning. I wasn't even listening. All I could think was, is this the guy? Is this why she left me? Every time she laughed, it felt like a knife twisting in my ribs. She looked alive in a way she hadn't with me for months. I told myself I was imagining it, but then I caught her glancing at him with that look, the one that used to be mine. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't crazy. Something was going on here. The worst part? Ethan acted like I didn't exist. Not in a rude way, but in that subtle, dismissive way that makes you feel like wallpaper. I tried to start small talk, but his answers were short, his attention glued to her. Julia didn't even try to ease the tension. She just sat there, smiling like we were all old friends catching up. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom just to breathe. My reflection in the mirror looked pathetic, eyes red, jaw clenched, like some guy on the verge of breaking down in a stranger's house. I told myself to hold it together, to get through the night, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. There was more to this story. Something big, something that would make "you're not a man" sound like the nicest thing she ever said to me. When I came out of the bathroom, I felt like I was walking into a scene I didn't belong in anymore. The laughter had shifted, quieter now, almost private. I lingered by the hallway for a second, hoping to steady myself before going back to the table. That's when I heard it, Julia's voice low but unmistakable. He's still clueless. I didn't even have to tell him. My heart stopped mid-beat. I pressed myself against the wall like some pathetic spy, trying to piece together the fragments. Ethan chuckled, his tone smooth and careless. Of course he doesn't know. You always said he never really paid attention. It was like someone had lit a fire in my chest. I wanted to storm in, demand answers, flip the table if I had to. But I froze. I needed to hear more. Julia continued, "I'll deal with the rest soon. He won't fight me on it. He never does." There was a pause, then the sound of glasses clinking, like they were toasting to my misery. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone when I tried to check the time. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the way she talked about me, like I was some spineless joke, like the years we spent together were nothing but an embarrassing footnote. I hated her for it, but I hated myself more for standing there and listening instead of doing something. When I finally walked back into the room, the conversation stopped instantly. Julia's eyes flicked to me, and for a split second, I saw something. Panic, guilt, before she masked it with that perfect smile. Ethan leaned back in his chair, cool as ever, like nothing had been said. Marcus was too busy telling some story about his dog to notice the tension crackling in the air like static. I sat down, trying to act normal, but inside, every muscle in my body was coiled like a spring. I didn't know what their game was, but I knew one thing. I wasn't leaving this night without answers. I sat back down at the table, forcing my lips into a smile so tight it felt like my face might crack. Julia was watching me out of the corner of her eye, her fork slowly spinning strands of pasta on her plate, while Ethan leaned closer to her, as if he had the right. My gut twisted and the wine in my glass suddenly tasted like vinegar. I tried to join in the conversation, but every word that came out of my mouth sounded fake, like I was reading from a bad script. Marcus, bless him, was still oblivious, going on about some home renovation disaster, like we were all one big happy group of friends. But I could feel it, this invisible current humming between me, Julia, and Ethan. It wasn't just me imagining things. Even Marcus began to slow down mid-sentence, glancing between us like he sensed something brewing. "You two okay?" he asked, chuckling nervously. Julia immediately answered with a soft laugh, brushing off his concern with a wave of her hand. "Of course, just catching up on old times," she said, her voice sweet but sharp enough that I felt it cut into me. Old times. The phrase stuck in my head like a hook. What kind of old times were they catching up on? I stared at Ethan, who smirked at me like he knew something I didn't. That smirk told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't just some random guest. He was part of whatever secret Julia had been hiding. I started asking questions I knew would annoy her. Harmless, small things, but enough to see her mask slip. "So, Ethan, how do you know Marcus?" I asked, leaning forward. He looked straight at me, that smirk never leaving his face. "Through Julia," he said casually, like it was nothing. My stomach dropped. Julia's fork clattered against her plate, and for a split second she froze before laughing it off. "We met ages ago. It's not a big deal," she said quickly, like she was trying to shut the door on that conversation. But her tone was too defensive, too fast. Marcus frowned slightly, sensing the awkwardness. He tried to steer the topic back to something safer, but it was too late. The air had turned heavy, and my brain was screaming that something was wrong. I caught Julia staring at me, her eyes cold and calculating, like she was daring me to say more. For the first time in a long time, I felt something snap inside me. Not anger exactly, but this raw, aching need to finally stop being the quiet, passive guy who let things slide. I looked at her and said, "Julia, can we talk in private?" The table went silent. Marcus glanced between us, clearly uncomfortable, and Ethan leaned back with a smirk that made my blood boil. Julia hesitated, then stood up slowly, her chair scraping the floor in a way that made my skin crawl. "Fine," she said, her voice low but steady. "Let's talk." I had no idea that what she was about to say would not only confirm my worst fears, but uncover something so twisted, I still can't believe I didn't see it coming. We stepped into Marcus's narrow hallway, just far enough from the dining room to avoid being heard. I could still see the flicker of the candlelight from the table, casting shadows across the wall like crooked fingers. Julia crossed her arms, leaning against the wall with that same detached confidence that had cut me to pieces a week ago. "So, what do you want, Calvin? An apology? A confession?" "You won't like either," she said, her voice laced with something between mockery and exhaustion. I stared at her, my chest pounding like a war drum. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended, trembling in a way I hated. "Ethan, don't play dumb, Julia. I heard you talking." For a second, her face tightened, and I saw it. The flicker of guilt, or maybe just irritation that I wasn't rolling over like I always did. Then she laughed, not kindly, but in that cruel, dismissive way that made my stomach knot. "You heard something, huh? Let me guess. You were standing there, pressed against the wall, hoping to find some courage in my words? You never change." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stand straighter, to not let her see me shrink. "Answer me. Who is he to you? Is this why you left?" Her eyes softened, but not in the way I wanted. It was pity. "Oh, Calvin, you really don't get it. Ethan's been around for months, maybe longer than that. She paused, and for the first time that night, she looked unsure, almost vulnerable. "We've been close, yes, but it's not just about him. It's about you. You stopped seeing me, Cal. You stopped seeing anything beyond your own routines, your own sadness." I felt that sting, but I wasn't about to let her twist this into my fault. "So you cheated?" I said, my voice louder now, sharp enough to make her flinch. "You decided I wasn't enough, so you found him?" Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. That silence was enough. I felt the ground shift under me, as though the walls of Marcus's house were tilting inward. "Do you even care what this is doing to me?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my attempt to sound strong. She sighed, looking away like she was tired of the entire conversation. "You never asked what I wanted, Cal. Not once. You just assumed keeping the lights on and fixing the sink meant everything was fine. But I was lonely. I was drowning. And when Ethan showed up, I cut her off before she could finish. "Don't you dare make this sound like a love story." My hands were shaking so badly I had to shove them into my pockets. I could feel something boiling inside me, a rage I'd never let myself feel before. I wanted to scream, to tell Marcus everything right there in the hallway, to wipe that smug grin off Ethan's face with my fist. But instead, I just stood there, breathing hard, staring at the woman who had once been my entire world. "Cal," she said, her tone soft now, almost apologetic. "You don't get it yet. Ethan isn't just some fling. She stopped, biting her lip as though she'd said too much. My mind spun with possibilities. What was she hiding? What could possibly make this worse than it already was? I took a step closer, my voice trembling with anger and fear. "He's what, Julia? Finish it." She looked me dead in the eye, and in that moment, I knew that whatever came out of her mouth next would destroy me in a way her leaving never could. Julia's eyes were locked on mine, but there was something different now. Like she wasn't just angry or defensive anymore. She was holding back, and I could see the weight of it pressing down on her shoulders. "Ethan isn't just someone I met, Cal. He's someone you know," she said finally, her voice low, almost like she was afraid the words might break me in half. I felt my breath catch in my throat. "What are you talking about? I've never seen that guy in my life," I shot back. But even as I said it, there was a flicker of doubt gnawing at me. Julia sighed, her gaze darting toward the dining room, where Ethan and Marcus were still chatting like nothing was wrong. "You didn't recognize him because you never paid attention to the people I kept around. Ethan's my co-worker. He's been to our house multiple times. He helped me when you were too busy working late or too tired to talk. And yes, something happened. More than once." She paused, and the silence that followed was so heavy it made my stomach churn. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was lying, but the way she looked at me told me this wasn't some twisted game. It was real. My ears were ringing as she continued. "But there's something else, and you need to hear it, whether you want to or not. Ethan isn't just the guy I fell for while I was falling out of love with you. He's the one who's been helping me figure out what comes next. Because, Cal, I'm not coming back. This isn't just a fight or a phase. I'm leaving for good. With him, I don't know what burned worse, her words or the calm certainty with which she said them. It was like she'd rehearsed this moment, like she'd been waiting to drop this bomb while I stood there completely unarmed. "You planned this," I said, my voice trembling. "All those nights you were working late, all those dinners you skipped. It was him, wasn't it?" She didn't deny it. She just stared at me with this hollow sadness that felt more like pity than regret. "You didn't fight for us, Cal. You stopped seeing me. And when I found someone who did, I couldn't ignore it anymore. My chest felt like it was caving in, and I had to bite my tongue just to stop myself from breaking down right there in Marcus's hallway. I thought I knew pain when she first walked out of our house, but this was something else entirely. It was betrayal wrapped in honesty, the kind of truth that claws at you from the inside. Through the haze of rage and heartbreak, a part of me started piecing things together, the late-night texts, the sudden bursts of laughter from the other room when she said she was on work calls, the way she'd stopped meeting my eyes weeks before. She actually left. It all made sense now, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. It made it worse. "Does Marcus know?" I asked suddenly, my voice colder than I'd intended. Julia froze for a moment, then shook her head. "Napiu, and I'd appreciate it if—" I cut her off, my anger finally boiling over. "Don't you dare ask me for anything right now. Not after this." I could feel my entire body trembling as I walked back toward the dining room, not even sure what I was about to do. Confront them both? Walk out and never look back? I didn't know, but I knew one thing. This wasn't the end. Not yet. When I walked back into Marcus's dining room, I could feel the weight of my anger radiating off me like heat. Ethan looked up at me, his smirk still plastered on his face, and Julia followed behind me, her expression sharp and unreadable. Marcus was mid-story, talking about some ridiculous mishap with his neighbor's dog, but he stopped when he saw the look on my face. "Whoa, everything okay, man?" he asked, his fork hovering halfway to his mouth. "No, Marcus. Everything is not okay," I said, my voice low but vibrating with something close to fury. I pulled out my chair, but I didn't sit. I just stood there, staring at Ethan, trying to piece together the right words to unleash. I didn't want to look like the pathetic, broken guy she painted me as in that hallway. I wanted the truth out in the open. "So, Ethan," I began, my tone cutting through the tension like a knife, "how long have you been seeing my wife behind my back?" The room went dead silent. Marcus blinked, his eyes darting from me to Julia, then to Ethan, completely blindsided. Ethan leaned back in his chair with that same arrogant coolness, but for the first time, I saw a flash of discomfort in his eyes. Julia's hand shot up as if to stop me. "Calvin, this isn't the time." "No," I snapped, my voice louder now, my chest heaving. "This is exactly the time. I've spent months pretending everything was fine while you—" I pointed directly at Ethan, my finger trembling with rage. "While you sat in my house, probably laughing at me behind my back, pretending to be just some co-worker." Ethan finally spoke, his voice maddeningly calm. "Look, man, I think you're overreacting. Julia and I—" "Don't say my name," I cut him off, my voice breaking. "Don't you dare talk to me like I'm some clueless idiot who doesn't see what's happening right in front of me." I could feel my face burning, and for a moment, I thought I might lose it completely, but Marcus jumped in, his voice shaky. "Wait, Julia, is this true? What the hell is going on here?" Julia's face tightened like she was holding back a storm. She looked at Marcus, then at me, and for a second, she almost looked guilty. "Yes," she said quietly, the word dropping like a bomb. "Ethan and we're together. I should have told you sooner, Calvin, but My laugh came out sharp and bitter, almost surprising me. "Together, that's what you call it? You call sneaking around, lying to my face, tearing my life apart, being together?" I turned to Marcus, my voice softer but just as raw. "Did you know? Did either of you plan this little dinner to rub it in my face?" Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. "What? No, I didn't know any of this, man. Julia, what the hell?" He looked genuinely disgusted, and for the first time, I didn't feel so alone in this mess. Julia shifted uncomfortably, her eyes narrowing as if my anger was an inconvenience rather than a wound she caused. "You don't understand, Cal. You never wanted to listen. I tried to tell you, but you were always too busy drowning in your own problems to see me." Her words hit me like a sucker punch. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I'd tried, that I'd done everything I could to save us, but the truth was, maybe I hadn't been enough. Maybe I'd been too weak, too distracted, but none of that excused what she'd done. Nothing could. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stood there, my hands shaking, my throat tight, staring at the woman I used to love and the man who had taken my place. And I realized something. This wasn't just the end of our marriage. This was the end of me pretending to be the quiet, passive guy who let life happen to him. Something inside me had shifted, and I wasn't sure I could stop it now. For a moment, the room felt frozen in time. Julia's confession hung heavy in the air. Ethan's smugness faded, and Marcus looked like he wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. My chest was pounding, but suddenly, all that anger I'd been holding on to, it just broke apart. I looked at Julia, at Ethan, and I realized something. They weren't worth my pain anymore. I had spent so long letting their betrayal define me that I'd forgotten I still had a choice. I straightened up, forcing myself to breathe. "You know what? I'm done. You two can have each other," I said, my voice calm now, almost unnervingly so. Julia blinked at me, confused by my sudden composure. "What?" she said, like she expected me to keep begging, to keep clinging to something that was already dead. "I said I'm done," I repeated, feeling lighter with every word. "If you think this is happiness, Julia, go ahead. But I won't be your punching bag anymore. I won't be the guy you walk over just because I loved you too much to fight back." Ethan leaned back in his chair, clearly not expecting me to just walk away with my dignity. Marcus gave me this look, a mix of sympathy and admiration, that made me realize how far I'd let myself fall. "Calvin, man, good for you," he said quietly, and that tiny bit of support meant more than I could explain. I grabbed my coat and keys, and for the first time in months, I felt free. Not angry, not broken, just free. As I walked out of Marcus's house, the cool night air hit me, and I swear it felt like I was breathing for the first time in years. I wasn't going to let Julia's words define me. I wasn't going to let her betrayal be the story I told myself. In the weeks that followed, something strange happened. I started living again. I joined a boxing gym, I cut my work hours to actually enjoy life, and I reconnected with people I'd lost touch with because I was too wrapped up in a toxic relationship. And the more I focused on myself, the more I realized how much of my life I had let Julia control. I wasn't less of a man, like she said. I just needed to find myself again. So here I am, sharing my story on Forsaken Joe. Not because I want pity, but because I know someone out there needs to hear this. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is leave. It hurts. It feels impossible at first, but it forces you to rebuild into someone stronger than you were before. What do you think about Julia and Ethan? Do you think I did the right thing by walking away without a fight? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your own stories of unexpected betrayals and how you came out stronger. And don't forget to subscribe to Forsaken Joe for more real stories that cut deep and make you think.